What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So we had talked previously about Google Stadia shutting down their first-party studios that was going to develop games specifically for the platform to harness the power of the cloud. But now it looks like things are actually getting worse for Stadia as a third-party developer is just outright canceling their game that they had set up for Stadia, and it looks like it's because Google was busy being Google. We'll talk about that one here today. Also, we are going to be going over E3 2021, as it looks like they are indeed planning it for this year, kind of. Also, Summer Games Fest also is now being teased, so we'll go over all of that today. And I want to also talk about GoldenEye Remastered once again, as a bunch of ex-Rare developers got together and kind of gave us some insight into what exactly happened back in 2007 with this game. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure that like button helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Small Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And we're going to start today with Halo and 343. Halo Infinite is coming out at the end of this year. We hope that Halo Infinite is coming out at the end of this year, but something I was thinking about is I don't think that would be their only Halo game going forward. It does appear to be their live service type Halo game, I guess alongside of Master Chief Collection for Game Pass, as the multiplayer will be free to play, and then we'll have a full single player that I guess you buy or just download from Game Pass. But with a new job listing popping up, it does look like they will at least have other games in the Halo franchise to look forward to. We can go over here. IGN had this one spotted with a job listing on Microsoft's site. 343 is looking to hire a producer to help develop a new project in the Halo universe. That's really it for the job listing, but at least says, okay, we're getting some other type of Halo game outside of Halo Infinite. And that could be two things I can think of right now. One is maybe Halo Wars 3, just the next Halo Wars, and that would go along fine with Game Pass. It is a different enough playstyle from Halo Infinite being more of the first-person shooter style, whereas Halo Wars would be the real-time strategy. The other possibility is a spin-off similar to ODST, how we had that one, where this would tell its separate story that still falls in line with the overall Halo universe. But this is for a producer role, which means we probably won't see what this game is for quite a while, so we'll just keep an eye on it. Also, we had talked about before, Akira Yamaoka had an interview on YouTube and basically hinted heavily towards something like Silent Hill being revealed this summer as a game that fans have been hoping to see for a while and should be pretty happy about it. So naturally, everyone started saying, oh, guess we're seeing Silent Hill this summer, but something interesting happened. The interview was pulled off of YouTube, which led to speculation that Konami or Sony had pulled it down. Well, it looks like it wasn't Konami, as VGC did reach out to them and they responded that they did not request for the video to be pulled down, which, if we are being led to believe these rumors that Sony and Konami are working together in collaboration for the Silent Hill game, kind of makes us wonder if Sony had the interview pulled on this one, or I guess the other possibility is that Akira wanted it pulled because it didn't go, I guess, for him looking at it, looking back, it's like, maybe I shouldn't have said that. And let's pull that interview down or cut that part out, because I have an NDA and I probably should not have been that specific about what I'm doing exactly right now. Hard to say, but after that interview got pulled down, it's only fueled the overall speculation around Silent Hill. Oh, and it does look like we're going to be getting some more information as to what's next for the Final Fantasy VII Remake series, because, well, we're looking forward to part 2, I guess, now, but there could also be other things maybe in the works here, as we talked about Ever Crisis, for example, being trademarked by Square in different regions. Let's take a look at this tweet here that summarizes everything up pretty well. This is from Audrey saying, so at 4:20 p.m. Japan time, Toriyama will be part of a special program where he'll talk about info regarding Final Fantasy VII Remake that can only be heard during this program. I'm guessing anecdotes. However, since they're hyping up this concert, announcements should happen during the concert itself. That concert will be taking place in the afternoon on Saturday in Japan. I'm gonna be very curious if this is an update on part 2, or if this is one of those spin-offs we were mentioning that could result from those trademarks that we saw filed like Ever Crisis, or if this is an update on a next generation patch for the PS5 and maybe the PC version and maybe the Xbox version. We're still unsure if it's just going to the PC or if it's going to the PC and the Xbox, but either way, I'll be keeping an eye out on this one this weekend to see what we get. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with E3 2021. Last year, E3 was canceled. We had Summer Games Fest, and then we also had Sony and Microsoft kind of doing their own thing, and to be honest, everything was very disorganized. It was all over the place. Like, the one thing I like about E3 now, looking back on a year without E3, is we knew when to expect everything. It was all like jam-packed into 1 week, and we were basically able to say, okay, this is when the Nintendo stuff is gonna happen, this is when Square, okay, and then Ubisoft's gonna go, and all. Like, we had it all kind of figured out ahead of time, and we knew which week to really pay attention. Well, now it looks like E3 is gonna take a shot at things this year. It's just gonna be a bit different. It's going to be all digital, apparently. Now, there's a proposal still needs to be voted on by the ESA board, which includes a lot of publishers and big game developers and all of this. Think of like Take-Two, EA, Nintendo, Microsoft, Sony, all of them. But this was a report from VGC, and we'll go over to them, where they say, according to E3 2021 pitch documents sent to games publishers and seen by VGC, the ESA has now outlined its proposals for this year's event, which would see 3 days of live stream coverage held during the previously announced dates of June 15th to the 17th. The EA's intention is to hold multiple 2-hour keynote sessions from games partners, an award show, a June 14th preview night, and other smaller streams from games publishers, influencers, and media partners. The broadcast event will be supplemented by media previews the week before, as well as demos released on consumer platforms, according to the ESA's proposal. Now, I do question the overall value of an all-digital E3 to a lot of these partners and publishers and developers. See, E3 is really popular and really big for a lot of these publishers because it is an in-person event, and a lot of talks can happen behind closed doors, which isn't something that would happen at an all-digital event, especially if it's really just a live stream and everyone just takes turns just live streaming whatever event they would have had set up on their own anyway. And that's the biggest thing here. The revenue certainly would not be as high with an all-digital event for the ESA, as opposed to it being in person, where they can charge millions and millions of dollars. I don't think they'd be able to do that with something that's all digital, especially since when you look at it and you say, well, a lot of these developers and publishers can just go live on YouTube or Twitch or wherever, and if it's big enough like a Nintendo Direct or a Sony State of Play or even Microsoft doing one, I mean, you could throw EA and Ubisoft and others, it'll still trend on Twitter, people will talk about it, and they wouldn't have had to have paid the ESA or E3 for the branding and the opportunity just to be on a stream that they created and kind of collaborate everyone together for. It just doesn't really make a lot of sense for an all-digital E3 to necessarily exist with the tools that all these other publishers have access to right now. So I do hope that maybe next year or something they can try another in-person event. They would have to figure everything out again and decide if they're going to stay in LA or go other places, or who knows. That's a whole thing they have to figure out there. But I guess they don't want to miss 2 years in a row, and they're willing to go all digital with it to at least still exist. Now, on the other side of this, it does look like Summer Games Fest will happen as well, and this was something that was certainly spur of the moment, I would say, because it did also seem very disorganized, and hey, maybe that's something that Jeff Keighley learned from last year. He's very good at least looking at valid criticism for the events he holds and tries to change things up and improve them, but we can see this tweet here. This is from Summer Games Fest, new year, new colors, and that got people really starting to talk about, oh yeah, I guess we are going to get Summer Games Fest, so much so that Jeff Keighley became very active on Twitter and started answering questions. For example, will Summer Games Fest be 4 months again, or will it be shorter? Jeff Keighley says less than 1 month. I think the sweet spot is still 1 week. We start on a Sunday and we end on a Thursday or a Friday with a ton of info every day, almost 24 hours for that day. I mean, seriously, with E3, it was pretty constant, like we had press releases all over the place, streams were happening, interviews, and all this stuff. So I think if they kind of condense it a bit better than when we have a Summer Games Fest, which I think we're still in phase 2. I'm not sure. I'll have to double check that one. But yeah, less than a month is at least better than what we had last year. But also think about this. If we have 2 different digital events running, we might have publishers and developers compete, and like they might end up, like we could have EA with Summer Games Fest and we could have Activision with E3. Like, how is that going to work? They're going to have to pick and choose where they go here. So it's going to be very interesting to see how all of that shakes out. And hey, at least we'll have something to look forward to this year that I'm hoping is a bit better than the chaos of last year with E3 being canceled and Summer Games Fest just trying to figure out what to do. Next up, let's talk about Google Stadia and a third-party developer who is actually canceling their release on Stadia kind of out of nowhere. And that, you're going to want to see this one, exactly why this is happening. Let's go over here to Twitter. This is from Andrew Spinks, who is the co-creator for Terraria. It says, Google, my account has now been disabled for over 3 weeks. I still have no idea why, and after using every resource, I have to get this resolved. You have done nothing but given me the runaround. My phone has lost access to thousands of dollars of apps on Google Play. I had just bought Lord of the Rings 4K and can't finish it. My Google Drive data is completely gone. I can't access my YouTube channel. The worst of all is losing access to my Gmail address of over 15 years. I absolutely have not done anything to violate your terms of service, so I can take this as no other way than you deciding to burn this bridge. Consider it burned. Terraria for Google Stadia is canceled. My company will no longer support any of your platforms moving forward. I will not be involved with a corporation that values their customers and partners so little. Doing business with you is a liability. So this is truly amazing here. I've said before that Stadia's biggest problem is a PR problem. They have no idea how to talk to seemingly the public, their customers, or apparently their partners. This is so strange to me. So, I mean, Terraria, I know it's not like a big AAA game or something, but it's very popular. If you look on Steam, it has a pretty solid concurrent player count. It's always up there in the top spots, for top 20 or so. But if you look on Google Play Store, Google's own store for mobile devices, it's number 7 or 8, and it's always in the top 10. So you figure Google would say, wow, we should really make sure that does make its way to Stadia because it's just something else to add in there. Basically, right now, third-party developers don't need Stadia. Stadia needs third-party developers badly, and this is over things as basic as, hey, can you guys restore my email address? I'm trying to sign into this and I can't, and I'm talking to your bots, which, hey, that's... a lot of us deal with that too. It's if you have an issue with Google, you're probably going to be talking to an automated bot. But this is one of their partners who's trying to put their game Terraria on Stadia. Google being Google is now affecting their gaming platform. Now, Andrew seems pretty serious about this. I don't know if they're going to be able to work this one out. Maybe if they just restore everything for him, and maybe he's like, you know what, I overreacted a bit. I don't know. It seemed pretty serious here on Twitter, and at this time, there hasn't been another tweet put out about this situation. I'm going to keep tabs on this one because this is very, very weird if Google loses a third-party game like this just because of what appears to be basic customer service on their end for a partner who's trying to put a game that has solid concurrent player count across the board on other platforms on Stadia. Interesting stuff here. Like I said, the Stadia situation continues to get worse, and somehow it continues to surprise me. Next up, let's talk about Anthem. Do you remember Anthem? Because I beat Anthem, and I forgot about Anthem. But one thing that apparently was happening is they decided to go back to the drawing board with this game and change it up. That at least is their plan. They're doing something on Anthem Next, which is this initiative to try to basically reboot the series, well, at least the game. Think of something that happened with No Man's Sky. Came out, it got destroyed in the media, reviews crushed it, they missed out on a lot of promises, all this, but they went back to the drawing board, they rebuilt it, and now people love the game. Same thing happened with Final Fantasy XIV. It's one of the most loved MMORPGs right now. So I guess EA's thinking, well, maybe we can do that with Anthem. But it looks like this week they're going to decide if it's worth actually rebooting it based on what's happened, or if it's time to scrap the project altogether. This from a report with Jason Schreier at Bloomberg. This week, EA executives will review the latest version of Anthem Next and decide whether to expand the team or abandon the project, said the people who asked not to be named, discussing private information. The Anthem Next team includes about 30 people, BioWare said last year. People familiar with the project said it will need to expand to at least triple that in order to produce new content and continue attempting to overhaul the game. EA has not yet indicated whether it's willing to commit that kind of budget to revive the maligned game. And I'm gonna tell you now, EA, it's probably time to move on from Anthem. Look, you could turn Anthem into this amazing thing. It could be like the greatest game ever made, but it's still called Anthem, and that's the biggest problem now. The name itself is so tarnished online that people probably won't even try. It could get 10s across the board, and they'd still sit there and be like, yeah, but it's Anthem. If they could change the name, then maybe. Maybe it has a chance. But at that time, it's you know what, maybe we should just move on, because half of the work was building up and marketing with the name Anthem and all of this. And honestly, on top of that, I don't know if there is much worth saving there anyway. The game itself really had some cool ideas to it, but I don't know how you'd be able to salvage what was there and turn it into a super compelling game. But let me know if Anthem is something that they should stick with, because really I'm just looking at this saying, you know what, I think it's time for that section of BioWare to move on to something else. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about GoldenEye Remastered, a game that should have been on the Xbox 360, but unfortunately wasn't. It ended up getting canceled right at the last minute, it seems, because you can play the game right now and it feels like it's basically done. There have been some funny bugs and glitches that have been found, but for a game that's technically in closed beta now, which it says when you start it up, it works surprisingly well. Play it start to finish, do some split screen multiplayer, the whole thing. Well, there was an interview coming out of Ars Technica with some ex-Rare developers that gave us some more insight into exactly what happened and why it didn't come out. As the project went on, Edmonds and Barry pointed to a moment exactly when, they can't recall, when their bosses gave the GoldenEye 360 team a green light. We were told everyone had approved it. Edmonds says the rights were all clear with no condition that anybody had to work on a version for a Nintendo console or any other requirements. That was all the team needed to hear to continue work on the Xbox 360 version. However, it turns out later on they found out the truth, as it was canceled, saying when it was put to Nintendo, everyone there approved it, except they didn't check with the one guy who mattered. Now, it's still kind of murky on exactly who blocked this, because it was not Yamauchi as originally said. So Mark corrected me on that, as it wasn't actually him since he had left, but someone else high up. I believe I was told his response went along the lines of, there is no way a Nintendo game is coming out on a Microsoft console. Now you might be wondering, well, hold on a minute. We have like Banjo-Kazooie and Tooie on the Xbox system. Conquer is over there. Remember they did that whole one for the original Xbox? They have taken some of those rare games and put it on Xbox systems. Yes, however, GoldenEye, especially like assets and code and stuff, it still partly belongs to Nintendo. They have rights over it to the point where they can say, no, we don't want this released. And that seemed to be the biggest driving force as to why this game did not come out back in 2008, we'll say. It's because Nintendo did not want it on a Microsoft console. It was a big deal at the time for them to block it, which is a real shame, because if you look at it with things like changing the visuals on the fly, really was not popularized until Halo Anniversary. So they were like ahead of the game with that idea. And it's a really cool effect if you're playing through it, just to see how bad the game really looked back on the Nintendo 64 and then changing over to the better visuals. According to them, there are only like 90 bugs left in the game. And I guess the achievements tab is going to be finished up. It was basically done, and it's so sad to see that, because the game itself would have been awesome back then, and hey, who knows, maybe they would have had some more runway if everything went well behind the scenes to do an online multiplayer. That could have been so cool, but here we are now in 2021, at least having the ability to play it, but also the ability to see what could have been. Oh, and if Nintendo still to this day is blocking it, I mean, come on, like, let just this one. Just let this one go. All right, look, you can put it on the Xbox, you can put it on PC, you could put it on the Switch. I think at this time we've all seen it. It's a pretty cool trip down memory lane. Let's just get it out there. And before we go to the comment of the day, let's take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday on the community tab that you can vote on. It goes up generally a couple of hours after Newswave goes live. And yesterday I asked everyone, will Halo ever appear on the Nintendo Switch, as some rumors have said, with 67% saying no, Halo will stay with Microsoft platforms. 33%, however, said yes, and that's so interesting how things have changed in the perception around Microsoft, because if I had asked you, will God of War go to Nintendo Switch? I can tell you now, probably 99% of you would have said, no, why would God of War go there? But like, we're to this point now where a third of people think there is a possibility that Microsoft's big flagship mascot could end up on the Switch. I mean, it's interesting stuff to see how the perception has changed around Microsoft since they have moved to having their games like an Ori or a Cuphead, while that's like Studio MDHR and Moon and all this, still allowing that to go to other platforms. Minecraft has been completely backed by Microsoft even, so I guess you can never say never, even with something like Halo. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Aru saying, we received an outpouring of feedback, always translates to, we thought your standards were much lower. So this is being done by Ubisoft Pune and Ubisoft Mumbai, and I think that they genuinely want this game to do the original justice, that being Prince of Persia: Sands of Time from the GameCube, the PS2, and the original Xbox. And I think the delays right now are good because obviously they saw the feedback and said, oh, we could probably do some more work on the character models. They could have just pushed it out. 13 came out, and that was a beloved niche cult classic type game, and it's terrible. Like, the game just gets pushed out there, and they say, oh, we'll fix it later. Clearly, they could have done that with Sands of Time and maybe not even fix it. They just pushed it out there. Ubisoft could have said, hey, you know what? You guys gave us what you gave us, and that's it. So I'm glad that they're seeing this Prince of Persia remake as important enough to delay it what could end up being half a year. We might not see this game until like August. And if that's the case, and it's shown again, and the character models look good, and the game plays well, I'm fine with waiting a bit longer for it. And ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit the like button, it really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today, whether it is E3 2021. It's gonna be all digital this year, apparently. Can they continue being all digital going forward and still remain relevant? Also, what do you think about Anthem attempting to make a return? Is it even worth it for EA to pursue Anthem anymore? And then what about Stadia losing a third-party game because they won't help the creator get back into their email? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.